If you're learning about Google Cloud Security, I have the episode for you. I have Marcus and Marian who work for Spotify sharing all things Google Cloud Security over three-part series videos. Basically, there are a set of 4 challenges. The first video, which is this one, they'll help you set up the prerequisite. In part 2, Marcus and Marian will be going through challenge 1 and 2. And in part 3, we'll be finishing off with the challenge 3 and 4. So overall, with the part 3-part series, you'll be able to get to learn a lot about Google Cloud Security, including GKE, which is the Kubernetes engine from Google Cloud. Marcus and Marian made these three-part series as part of the Advent of Cloud Security by Cloud Security Podcast. So you can also find these videos on advent.cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. But for now, let's enjoy session 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Advent Calendar for Cloud Security Podcast 2024. My name is Marcus, and I'm joined today by my colleague Marian, and we both work for Spotify in the Cloud Security team. Now, this episode will be about a workshop that we have created and that we have named A Hitchhiker's Guide to Google Cloud CTF. In this workshop, you will learn a lot about common services in Google Cloud and also common misconfigurations that can happen, and how we can both discover these and also protect against them. But before we dive into the material, we'll start with a short introduction of who we are. Marian, would you like to start?
Yeah, hi. My name is Marian, and I work as a senior security engineer at Spotify in the cloud security team. And here we mostly deal with Google Cloud and lots of configuration and things that could potentially go wrong in Google Cloud and how to prevent that. And I'll hand it over to Marcus.
Yes, and as mentioned, I'm Marcus, and I work in the same team as Marian here at Spotify. And our goal has really been to use all of the knowledge that we get day to day from working with cloud security issues and questions and bundle all of that together into this workshop. And in order to carry out this workshop, there's only a few things you will have to do. So first of all, you need to install the Google Cloud CLI G-Cloud on your local machine. And we have included a link for this here, and we will also share these links in the description of this episode. There's also a link here to some of the common commands that G-Cloud offers. And besides installing this, you also need a Google account, which is what you will use to create these resources that are needed in your Google Cloud project. Now, in order to set this up, we have taken all of the code needed for that and bundled that into this GitHub repository that I'll show you here. So the resources will be created by yourself using Terraform. And Terraform is a common tool that can be used to create resources. We won't explain how to install Terraform locally, but there are some really good resources out there for how you can install it. Now, this workshop and all of the material that we will show is so that anyone without specific experience with Google Cloud can follow through and do all of the challenges in this workshop. So you don't need to be an expert in Google Cloud or Google Cloud services, but basically this workshop will show you some of those common services by creating them yourself and then experiment with the challenges that we have prepared for you. Now, it's important to know that this repository and the code that you will deploy will create a vulnerable public Google Cloud Kubernetes cluster. And it's important that you only keep that resource and the other resources active when you're working on this workshop. So as soon as you finish or you want to take a break, make sure to destroy the resources again. And Marian will show you how to do that in just a second. Now, besides creating a Kubernetes cluster, you will also use this code to create other services that you will use, such as Cloud Functions, Compute Engines, and this script that we will show you would also set up the needed IAM permissions that you will use. Now, that was a general intro, but I will now hand over to Marian that will show you how to deploy this and create all the resources you will need for this workshop. Marian, take it away.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Marcus. Then let's have a look at what we'll have to do to set up the challenges. You can use this repository here, which is called GCP CTF Workshop. And of course, we'll also put the link to this repository in the description box of the video so that you can easily find it. And it contains Terraform code that is going to create all the resources that the challenges need. Take a look at the Terraform code just so that you know what is going to be deployed in your Google Cloud project. Of course, that might spoiler you a little bit here and there about what is going to happen in the challenges. Additionally, we have prepared the challenge setup and challenge destroy scripts here. If you clone this repository and you want to set everything up, you basically just have to run the challenge setup script. It will invoke Terraform and also do some other minor configurations that the challenges need. The challenge destroy script basically does the same thing reverse, so it will destroy all the resources that we created with Terraform and clean up any temporary files that we might have created. And we also recommend that you use the destroy script, of course, when you're either done with the challenges or when you want to take a break that takes longer than a day or so, just to save some money and to avoid costs occurring in your GCP project. In general, we really try to use resources that are very cheap. Even the GKE cluster that is going to get created is very small, so not a lot of costs will occur because of that. And if you sign up for Google Cloud for the first time, you can even get some free credits, and that's a quite generous amount. It's more than 200 euros, and that is, of course, way more than enough for what you're going to need for this workshop. Overall, the resources that we have here, if you just have them running for a day or so, it will only cost a few cents. All right. One disclaimer that also Markus had mentioned before, please don't create this CTF in a production environment or in your work environment because it is deliberately misconfigured. So just use a new GCP project for that you can use for playing around with things and for experimenting. And yeah, don't put anything else that's important next to those resources. All right, so once you would be done with all of the setup, the next folder that you would go into here is the hints folder. And here you can find the information that you will need for all the challenges. The challenges are meant to be done in sequential order because they build on top of each other. So start with challenge 1 and work your way through. We can take a look at how these documents are structured. We'll always start with an introduction. And in this introduction, we'll give you some background explanations about the configuration that might be vulnerable. We'll also give you already some hints how you can get started with the challenge and further background information that might be useful for you, especially if you are not that familiar with GCP yet. And during the next sessions, we will, of course, also walk through all of that together with you. And then we also always add a goal, which is supposed to hint when you actually completed the challenge. That is a bit hard to actually give you a good hint here without taking away too much of what you are supposed to find. But we hope that it can still help you a bit so that you can figure out when you actually completed a challenge and when you maybe found a flag. And lastly, we have the hints section here, which you can use when you are stuck or when you don't really know how to get started. You can take a look here. But in the upcoming sessions, we will also walk through the full solution together with you. And we hope that this way, the sessions can be helpful for you, even if you can't create your own GCP project and you can't set all of that up, because you can still listen to the sessions and see what the solution would have been and hopefully still take something away from it. Okay, so let's do some of the setup steps together. First, you would need to clone the repository. I already did that here. You can see the content here. You can also see the challenge setup script that we need to run. Before we do that, though, we need to make sure that we have a set of tools installed. The first one is Terraform, because we're going to use that to create the resources. The second one is gcloud. gcloud is the command line utility to interact with Google Cloud. So the setup script also uses that to do a set of configurations on the cloud resources. And lastly, because the first challenge uses a GKE Kubernetes cluster, you will also need kube-control. You can install that separately, or you can also install it as a gcloud module. You can find some instructions in the README of the repository. But once you have gcloud, kube-control, and Terraform, then you are ready to go. The last thing that you'll need to do is to authenticate to GCP so that Terraform and gcloud can actually interact with your Google Cloud project. To do that, in gcloud, you can run gcloud auth login. And if you run that, it will pop up a browser window and walk you through an OAuth flow. And afterwards, you can use the gcloud CLI to interact with your cloud project. And as a last step, you would need to run gcloud auth application default login. That is Very similar to the first command, the only difference is that it places an authentication token on your local machine, which Terraform can then pick up and use. You don't need to configure much here because that just gets placed in a default location and Terraform will pick it up from here. If you would like to have more information about how the Terraform login works or how Terraform in general works, then we can really recommend the documentation from HashiCorp because it's really good and it will definitely give you a good understanding of what's going to happen here. But you don't need to spend too much time on Terraform because the challenge setup script will do everything for you. So once you are properly logged in, all you need to do is run the challenge setup script. And it is going to ask me for the GCP project ID that I want to use to set up the workshop in. So to find this project ID, once you created your first Google Cloud project, you can log in with that corresponding Google account and go to the Cloud Console, which you can find at console.cloud.google.com. And here you can also see your project ID. You can copy it from here, or you can also find it here. So let me copy my project ID here. This is also a free dummy project that we're using, and you can also see that you get quite a bunch of free credits for this, and we haven't really used them up at all. So this, the resources that we're going to create are not expensive. So let's enter our project ID here, and then the setup script will start running. It can take a while, actually, especially the GKE cluster setup is not super fast. So you can go get a coffee here and then you can come back later and then you should be ready to start the challenges. Once the setup script has finished, let's take a look at how this is supposed to look like. When you search for GKE, you can find the Kubernetes engine here in the Cloud Console. And you can see that it created a GKE cluster. So if you click on it, you can also find the IP address of the cluster here at the public endpoint section. And this is the IP address that we're going to use as an entry point for the first challenge. So once your cluster is up and when you see this, you should be good to go.